Welcome everybody. How are you doing today? It's so very nice to have you here. And today I wanted to speak a little more about our upcoming 3-week intensive that begins this coming Sunday, February 19th. And the theme of the intensive is Sahaja, Sthiti, nervous system and awakening, living in a true independence from the past. We could actually say embodiment of presence, right? Because we all know the difference between what it is like when we can sit quietly and just know presence, our true nature, which in itself, of course, very powerful, amazing, beautiful, and important recognition. And we know the difference between that and our day-to-day life when past arises and when our physiology gets affected by the arising past. And that's really where the understanding of the nervous system and brain is so key, so that we can learn about it, we can learn how it functions, we can learn to address it, and we can learn how to help it in a moment, how to help the nervous system and brain to come back to rest here, so that we can come back to rest in presence as well. So today I wanted to speak a little bit about one other little theme that I will be addressing in these 3 weeks, and that is reactivity and projection. And we all know situations in life when seemingly out of nowhere, here you are interacting with people, interacting in the world, reading, engaging, doing things, and then suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, past arises and you experience reactivity. And if we are lucky, we can recognize that, right? However, a lot of the times we don't, because past as it arises, it affects our experience. It affects thoughts, feelings, sensations, emotions. And in a moment when it has arisen, it looks very, very, very real. So we don't always recognize it for what it is. We believe in those moments. And that's also the function of the brain and the nervous system, right? Which can't discriminate between past and present. We believe in those moments that that's what really is happening right now. And of course, in those situations, there is something happening in this moment, of course, as well. We just, in addition to that, the tendencies of the past that have been laying dormant in our subconscious, when the circumstances are right, they arise, so they get triggered by the circumstances. The circumstances engage that, and then they arise, and that is why we experience it as if it was happening suddenly out of nowhere. We don't always really understand it or catch it or recognize it for what it really is. And so often in these moments we experience reactivity, and reactivity, and I mean it with absolute kindness and with no judgment. Reactivity really is the symptom of the past. So when you experience reactivity, but please be careful not to judge that, because the moment you judge it, we can't be present. So the moment you experience reactivity, that is a sign, that is a symptom, that is something that we can, take to understand what's going on. We can understand that means past is present. And yet so often, again, because of lack of awareness or understanding of what it is, we don't really realize, we don't even realize or recognize that process as it is happening. And so we end up, it's an automatic process. It's not like we do it consciously, but what ends up happening is a projection in which we project the past into this present circumstance. And that means, in that moment, past colors our experience. It colors our perceptions, it colors our understanding, it colors our emotional response. If you find yourself sometimes in situations where you find like your response is so much bigger than what the situation, warranties, that you can be sure that that response in big part is fueled by the past. So when that kind of projection happens, that is a very specific kind of projection. It's, it's that veil that veils our ability to experience things as they are happening in the present. The past gets projected into the present situation, and that really changes our experience. And in those moments, we can really believe that that is true. Not only your physiology is telling you it's true, you experience sensations and feelings, emotions and thoughts, but also your perception of the outer world, so to speak, tells you also that, something is happening because you are experiencing or seeing, through the veil of the past. And that's why it's so important and so powerful to understand that, to understand, first of all, that the brain itself, the physical organ brain, cannot discriminate between past and present. So when past arises, it is being experienced as if it was happening in a moment. Except for the past tendencies or memories that have been already integrated, right? Then we just know, oh yeah, it's just a memory. But if it hasn't, it is being experienced as if it was going on right now. So we need to understand that. Then we also need to learn to recognize the symptoms of that. When reactivity is present, no matter what it looks like on the outside, no matter what you think is real, no matter what you believe in those moments, you can't trust your perception because that past is here. And so in that way, we need to learn to recognize the symptoms. That's a level of very simple honesty. Again, when there's judgment, we can't do that. But when we do that without judgment, with kindness, we can recognize, wow, reactivity is here, past is here. And of course, the next step is, can I be here? Can I be present? And in the past few weeks, I have had several conversations about this. The most important thing, what we really want is to be here. What we really want, no matter what's happening, no matter what's going on, what we really want is to be here. So can I be here? Can I recognize? We recognize it with kindness. That's compassion, kindness. You are not in charge of the experience that arises. But recognizing it for what it is, can I be here? Can I allow this to be here and to come to rest? So that eventually, the past can be experienced, that it can subside. And then we can come back to knowing what is really true in a moment, which is truth, our true nature, which is everything is okay just the way it is, which is here we are. That is what is happening right now. And so in that way, it's very, very powerful. Because only from here, we can know, how to move forward. And that's when we talk about, Sahaja, Sthiti. We talk about this movement that is independent, that independent movement that really comes naturally, arises. That's a natural communication from our true nature. that's very different than the past. And so we want to be quiet enough, we want to be resting enough, we want to be at rest here so that we can recognize that movement. So I want to invite you all to come and join me in this 3-week intensive. If you are new to me, if you are a first-time student, you can come for free for the first week, or we have a special price for you for the 3 weeks. And also, please comment, please subscribe, please share. Many of you have been commenting, I appreciate that. It really helps us to make this more visible for everybody who may be interested in this.